Thank you. Good morning, Your Royal Highness, and thank you very much again for taking part in this session and for trusting yourself to a rookie interviewer. I've got so many questions I'd like to ask you across such a wide area of energy topics, but I think that would be spreading your time very thin across too broad a base. So I'd really like to focus in over the next half an hour and really do a deep dive on the Declaration of Cooperation, the current market, where, if you like, the here and now and the soon to be here and now, and just really get some sort of further details on that. So very much focusing in. I think the place I'd like to start is just to take you back, well, a month and a day to the 4th of June meeting. Now, it struck me there was a lot of moving parts to that meeting, a lot of separate elements, but perhaps most of the coverage just seemed to focus on the voluntary cuts. And I was wondering if you could sort of rewind the clock for us back to 4th of June and detail some of those other areas and what the other important aspects of that meeting and what it tells us about the way forward.
It's a good question to start with, but in order to unwind for the 4th of June, I think I have to take you a little bit in a longer trip ahead of that June 4th meeting, which is more to do with trying to address the old challenging issues that the market keep challenging us as a group, be it OPEC itself or OPEC plus. As a personal note, I've had this pleasure of being involved in OPEC affairs. Actually, it's 36 years and a month. So I know it inside out. I have to say a few words, if you don't mind. Our friends here do not mind, to put a few words on this wonderful palace with its grandiose history. It's an 8th centuries palace. And I have to also share a few words of gratitude and thanks to the city of Vienna, the people of Vienna, the mayor, and the government of Austria for being a superb host, as Haytham was saying, for the last 58 years. Cherishable days and nights. You may find them one day in my book, if I ever have the time to write a book. But it's been a welcoming city and gracious people. But going back to your question, I think we have been, as an OPEC or OPEC plus, will continue to be. Any person with sensibility would say that we will be continued to be challenged. And for that matter, we needed to head on, reach out to these issues, attend to them, and go for what we think would be the right recipe to attend to this market situation, which is more and more transparency, and leaving no dot that is not being made, no line that has not been addressed, and no questions that has not been handled, or no, if I would call them, possibility of cracks that has not been phantom cracks, if I could call it, then it's not been heads-on handled, where we can make it quite visible for people that there is no cracks. So going back to that story, I think we did ourselves as OPEC Plus a great service in ensuring that we also seek the support of independent third parties. That's why we have done a great job in nominating few of those 3 third parties, independent institutions that do deliver us the monthly production and monthly supply, and how much people are committed. We did ourselves a favor when we created the compensation scheme to ensure that people uphold their commitments. We did ourselves a favor when we met on a monthly basis for mitigating the situation which had been bestowed on us ever since COVID. And then we did ourselves a favor in creating an agreement that went on for 2 years. And as you see, the wisdom for that is quite apparent, and that's why we are making a repeat of it somewhat, albeit shorter than 2 years. But again, the lesson learned in mitigating and attending to the COVID crisis and what have you was more transparency, more clarity, and more engagement with the market and market participant, whereby we can communicate, but we have to communicate without any distortions from our side and without an incoming distortion from other side. There is always the chance that people would try to misread our statements, misread our intents, but it's also our job to make sure that it is properly heard and properly addressed. And we also recognize that we had to go through attending the challenging issues that the market rightly had been posing questions about, which is the difference between the ceiling and the real production. That's another one of those quantum cracks that people try to penetrate to shake these arrangements that we have. The quantum disputes claim to be disputes about the fairness of the allocations of these target productions and the basis of it, and also the vacuum when on the issue of how much people are allocated and why they are not being allocated when they cannot produce it. And between trying to be fair and equitable and yet and wanting to address the market questions and to avoid the cynical part of the questioning anomaly, we had to, again, like any human, responsible human or a responsible group, sit together and sort out all of these questions permanently. This way we can, because this is the only way to create a proper platform in order for us to attend to the situation, prevailing situation as it is. That's why we had the 4th of June meeting. The ask was so big, I must say. Each and every party, for the purpose of arriving to that consensus, had given up a bit here and a bit there. I'm very grateful for the efforts that were made in 36 hours. We went out of that meeting, we had an agreement, we have added more transparency anomaly, which is again engaging with third-party institutions, independent institutions to verify production capacities, whereby we will then create better baselines for each and every country, and that process will be continuing with us for as long as we have agreements. It is the reality check that we had to undergo, and I believe that the testimony of that is what we have written together and agreed together. People sometimes ask, why then you had to do, as Saudi Arabia, the voluntary cut? And my answer is very simple. We had to do it because there was another ask for the market, a more immediate ask or a more immediate expectations of the market that the OPEC Plus would need to do so. If we are to be fair for everybody, and if we wanted everybody to get along, we have to make sure that they maintain their focus on the more relevant, more long-term issues, and to create another ask would be a distortion. That's why we've elected to take that job on a temporary basis. This experience, unlike what you hear in some outlets, was not our first. I would have to recall that in June 2020, we ourselves, with our friends from UAE, Kuwait, and Oman, had made a voluntary contribution for a month. Ourselves willingly had underwent a voluntary cuts that started in February 2021, went on for 3 months, and then we gradually phased it out until the month of July 2021. I would ask you, Paul, if I can turn the question, where would it have been if we have not done those things then? It gave the market full of assurance that there is a attendance to this situation. It did not in any way put us back again to the old 80s when we were named as the swinging producer and what have you, because we all actually, as OPEC Plus, do swing, but we swing both ways, not in a single way. I believe, honestly, to make the space and to allow people to focus on the real issue that will enable us to navigate into the future, it was our, I think, honestly, it has to be ourselves, since we brought all of these ideas together. So the net effect of this whole thing, something to bring some help to bring stability, temporary or short-term stability to the situation, but a more long-term solutions that address all of the questions, which, in my judgment, will help to create a better environment, a more cohesive group, a more conciliatory group, a more reasoned group for why people have a raison d'être for, if I can be a bit of French here, of staying and maintaining their commitment. Why? Because there is always a room for consensus, be it as big producer or be it a small producer. In the last move this week, yes, we went on continuing with our voluntary cut, but again, part of what we have done with the help of our colleagues from Russia was also to mitigate the cynical side of the spectators on what is going on between Saudi Arabia and Russia in that specific matter. I think it's quite telling to see us on Monday coming out with not only our own extension of the million, but also with validation from the Russian side that they will do 500 from export. I forgot to mention that also, and this is something that we give great deal of recognition for the Secretariat, whereby myself as a chair, not as a Saudi representing Saudi Arabia, but as a chair and with the Secretariat, we worked hard with the 7 independent sources verifying Russia number, and they have committed to this exercise, and they are going to be doing it on a monthly basis. And for them to choose, and I would have to give it to them, that it was a voluntary cut that was not imposed on them. It was actually genuinely was delivered by them, including delivering that they will do it from their exports, because it is more meaningful for people to gauge whether this commitment was discharged.
I'll come on to the markets and market response in a minute, but just to pick up a bit on what you were saying there about the way forward and the future, if you like, roadmap for the Declaration of Cooperation. What do you see as the major work in progress at the moment, the major challenge? Is it in that data transparency area? I mean, where's the sort of the next major development?
Well, What is challenging is this, what you call it, reviews. Just last week, you've seen, all of us seen how much of a review was done in terms of demand, specifically, for example, the US. There is an 800,000 barrels. In April, it was not there. Today, it is here. There is always reviews, and that's why we have, unfortunately, and I said unfortunately, discarded the IEA, because the IEA have their own set of numbers, but then they come and revisit and revise, along with the other anomalies that comes out of the IEA, which create a distortion to what the market should see today. I would have to quote, I think Helena Croft is somewhere here around. I would say that she rephrased something I have said to her, but I'll give it to her. It's probably going to be the quote of the year. This market is about show me, not about tell me. That's her quotation. I would have to say that's true. That's why, consistently, ever since even October, we've been saying, I will believe it when I see it. Now, if we don't see it, simply because even data is lagging, that makes it even more difficult and more challenging.
Well, moving on to the markets, I'll come on to the role of speculators immediately afterwards, but just to start off on the current market, I mean, what you've described from a 4th of June and before seems a very fundamental root and branch change, a very important, particularly on those transparency issues. Yet the market seemed rather slow to pick up on it, rather slow to respond. I mean, well, what's the market missing? Is it just slow and it will get there, or is there something else that accounts for this, should we say, relatively slow response?
I'll have to be fair. As I said, what we have delivered in that weekend, or the 36 hours, was too big for people to comprehend, although we did a detailed press conference. That's why, it's good to have this opportunity today to go in a more meaningful, more detailed way, and that's why I'm grateful for your question. But again, I felt that, and we still believe that we have addressed all of the above. I would have to, on behalf of our colleagues here, attendance from OPEC, or even some representation of our friends from OPEC Plus, I don't think that in the last 4 years or 3 years and a half that we have not done anything in the book, outside the book, that says we would not collaborate. Well, actually, we have proven that we have been up to the challenge, and I cannot think of any more challenging time than April 2020, and look at what we did. Not only we did it with ourselves or for ourselves, but actually we did it with a lot of people. I still have to repeat that the G20, given the fact that we were hosting the G20, had contributed to about 4.5 to 5 million of our cuts, including some measures that were taken on stocking, done by India, China, and others. So you have to give it to us in a way that when there are crises, we attend, but also we attend both ways. Let's not forget that OPEC has been a force of stability in the years past, over the last 58 years, and also OPEC Plus have continued that role. To take that out from us, I think I would have to ask some of those people to go back and take lectures in history of oil, maybe with Dan Yergin and your good self, and just to make themselves acquainted with what is OPEC and OPEC Plus is all about.
I should add, we also have Robert McNally in the audience as a potential teacher on that.
Bob has a
we'll
good
have
book
plenty
too.
of takers on.
Bob has a book. I think he's around. Bob has a good book also.
He's there. Similar ground, but you'll have to forgive me here. I'm an analyst, so I have to throw some data around occasionally. So I want to talk specifically about the role of speculators in the market as of now. And the statistics I'm going to throw at you are sort of the latest positioning data across the main contracts, which showed the largest net short on crude oil since 2020, the lowest absolute net long since 2012, and the lowest net long as a percentage of open interest in the market since 2008. Now, to me, this doesn't feel like 2020 or 2008. So it's more or less the same question. What are the speculators missing? What are they doing for this to justify such an extreme positioning in a market?
Well, speculators are traders, which by the way, I honestly believe, and I will say it this time, and I'm not going to repeat it. Even in farmers' market, you will have speculators. They are there to stay. For all sorts of reasons, you will always have speculators in every market. So I don't want to spend more time on that, more to go back to the original purpose of these tools, how they were created, where they were created. Specifically, they were created to hedge, for people to de-risk their exposures, be it on foreign currencies and commodities and what have you. It seems to be that these tools have had an excessive use for it to tender for the speculator, whom have always been inexistent even before these tools were created for. I would have to argue it is all about the input that they're getting. So if you have an input of so-called data or news or what have you, mostly, in my judgment, lately has been exaggerated on the negativity, because you go to the so-called pendulum swings all of them. Sometimes, all of a sudden, and we've seen it in the last 6 months, by the way. We've seen it in October. Look at how much verbal barrage came out after OPEC meeting on October, when so many people, whom I'm sure they have lost their credibility by now, were almost swearing in TVs and reporting and quotations that this act of OPEC Plus was a belligerent act meant to increase prices and blah, 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 all of the hobble. Even, by the way, a repeat was made of that sort in April. Look at what. But again, this is, there is a kind of a short memory type of thing. So I'd have to say that given the situation today, if you call it, the nay are winning, which is the negativity is taking its own part and taking its own route. But with things that we do, with things that with others do, including central bankers, including data that hopefully would come very soon, that people would go for the altar. And I've seen it, you've seen it as a follower of markets, where the pendulum can swing actually over the last 6 months. And I would ask you as an analyst to check my statement. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But it's been going on for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, on and off. It's like a pedal, you push the pedal and then you relieve the pedal. And it's all about good news and bad news. How they can interchangeably play them together, I don't know. But it seems to be working, because it gives people some trading scope for them to fiddle and play. Or arrange, I'm sorry.
No, thank you. I mean, widening out a little bit more about the future and the market background. I mean, in terms of this current oil cycle, economic cycle, the current stabilization efforts, how will you personally know that you're finished with this cycle, that when the current stabilization has moved into another phase? Because look at it now, I mean, demand seems to be good, if anything surprising on the upside. Inventories are are starting to fall. So will you take a demand signal, an inventory signal, or are you looking at broader macroeconomics, global macroeconomics, the Fed and the interest rate cycle? I mean, how do you know you're done, in other words, in terms of that broader picture?
That's the most perplexing thing. People, for example, again, I will use the US demand thing. People were saying, no demand, no demand. Well, look at what April did. I wouldn't be surprised that if we see the updated numbers of May or the updated, but it seems to be that they're coming, corrections are coming ex post facto. You cannot change a negativity that is emanating from, as again, Helima is saying, it's a tell me type of thing, not a show me type of thing. Unfortunately, the show me thing comes a month or two later, but there is a great deal of negativism, a diverse type of negativism that is taking everything as a hostage. I think clarity for what the central bankers will do will help. I think better and more numbers would come that would show that inflation is somewhat, and it's by the way, again, people overlook the fact that inflation is being managed. Inflation did come down for quite amount of percentages ever since. So the tools in the kit with the central bankers, so as the tools in our kit, whom we still claim ourselves being the central bankers, are working and playing. We're doing a great deal of job maintaining stability of this market. Mind you, of the range where people can fiddle with, so as the central bankers. So it's, I don't know, but I would assume one thing, that as central bankers are focused in attending to their mission, I have to say, and I believe our friends here can validate that when their turn comes to speak, that I am very in my comfort zone, that the cohesion that we have, that the consensus process that we've created will enable us to attend to these situations now, next month, the month after. And we still have our, tools in our kit. We still have the GMMC meetings that do hold meetings every 2 months. That GMMC meeting can call for extraordinary meeting. We're not devoid of any tools. In fact, we have all the tools, the old and new. I believe now, with the sorting out of what we have done in June, people are in a very much more of their comfort zone. So I'm very optimistic that actually OPEC Plus, with the changes that we have attended to, will become even more effective, but also more transparent.
We're swiftly running out of time, but you here have got a very broad audience of oil traders, of oil companies, of analysts, international companies, national companies, governments. And if you wanted
what concerns me the most is Aramco.
If you wanted to distill what you've just said down to what one key message, is it the data transparency message, or is there something else you'd like people to go away from this session thinking that's the key?
I think people should be in their comfort zone, that this market will not be left unattended for. That's for sure. I'm in my comfort zone. That's why I'm enjoying my day. Will be enjoying the rest of the day. I don't get to be easily intimidated, so as are my colleagues. We're very much focused on the job, and the job only. I see some of these stories here and there, and I laugh because I know that it will be a matter of a week or two that whatever storytelling that they had will be denied by facts, rather than having to deliberately put an effort to try to engage. I hope that they can listen to what we say as directly to them, rather than hearing it second hand, third hand, fourth hand, where the message gets to be diluted. But I'm in my absolute comfort zone. I did say it. I will mix it up between Alan Greenspan and Draghi. We will continue the effort of surprising markets, and I will tweak what Draghi was saying. We will do whatever is necessary. No, not whatever it takes, whatever is necessary.
And to reinforce your message on precision, we are finishing to the second within our time. So all that remains for me to do, really, Your Royal Highness, is
that's the conformity exercise.
That's good. That doesn't happen often.
Thank you.
All that remains for me to do is to thank you again very much indeed for the session. I've enjoyed it a lot. I said all my other material, we'll come back and do a 6-hour podcast for people later. But for now, again, thank you very much indeed. And please join with me in thanking you.
Many thanks, Your Royal Highness, Prince Abdulaziz bin Salman. It's good to see you. Don't go too far, but we need to get you out of that chair because we're going to set up here for a big photo opportunity.
I missed saying something. You were quoting John Eliot's song.
Yes, I'm still standing by Sir Elton John.
Can I add, with all due respect to John, can I add one piece?
Of course.
And we shall glow.
What's that?
We are still standing, but we shall glow.
We shall grow. Okay.
Glow.